Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Momentum Chat. I am Majida Bay, your financial conductor. I help parents and professionals get on the right financial track and become someone both their parents and children can be proud of. I'm really excited about our show today. This is week 8 of our ABCs of Wealth series, and we're talking about all things H. So stay tuned, grab a pen, pencil, paper. You want to take some notes. We're going to be talking about some definitions today of a few words, and I really look forward to the conversation. So be right back in just a moment. Good evening once again. I am Majida Bay, your financial conductor, and I help parents and professionals get on the right financial track and become someone both their parents and children can be proud of. I am here with you today, and this is week 8 of our ABCs of Wealth series, and this week we are talking about all things H. All right, so today's conversation, we are going to be diving into hours, hyperinflation, and hedge funds. So I know some of these words, it took me a little while to find some terms that went with H, right? But I wanted to start with hours, right? So in the description, I mentioned there how it's so important, right? What is your most valuable asset? And what we teach in the financial industry is that it's time, right? Time is your most valuable asset. And so in terms of building wealth, you have to allow time. You have to give yourself time in order to build wealth, right? Wealth's not built overnight. Right? You can get rich overnight, but you do not build wealth overnight. Wealth is a process. It takes time to build wealth. And for those who are used to tuning into the show, my co-host, hopefully he'll be joining us soon. My mentor, coach, Mr. John Epting Jr. He's a senior financial broker in the financial services industry. He's been doing that for over 20 years. He's a husband, father, and just a phenomenal man that I've had the privilege and pleasure to work with. And I have worked under his tutelage for over the last 10 years in the financial services industries. So as financial professionals, our focus really is on education, helping individuals and families get on the right financial track, understand how money works so they can get it to work better for them. And we started this series 8 weeks ago, and we wanted to go through the end of the year where we'll be talking about the ABCs of wealth, right? Better understanding money for you and your family so that you can make more informed decisions and know what to do with the money that you make. So this week is H, right? And so I was talking about time, right? How time is your most valuable asset. And in order to build wealth, time is one of the key components in order to achieve wealth. So oftentimes we're focused on the money, right? Like I don't make enough money, or I don't earn enough, or I'm not able to save, I'm not able to invest. And it's really not about how much money you make, but how much you get to keep. And so the more money you're able to keep, the more you're able to save and invest, and over time build or accumulate wealth. Right? One of the principles that we teach is that it's not important how much money that you save, but that you start the habit of saving, right? Start the habit of putting money aside, putting money to work for you so that eventually you won't have to work for money. And so time is something that you have to embrace. You have to allow time in order to build wealth, but you got to get started. At some point in your financial journey, you have to make a decision that things are going to change, or you're going to make some different financial decisions in order to be able to build wealth. So it's not just having the money, but it's also having the mindset to build wealth. And part of that mindset is having time and investing hours in order to build your wealth. So our next concept that we wanted to touch on is hyperinflation. What is that? All right. So hyperinflation, it's a word that starts with H. So it's related to this conversation because also in terms of building wealth, one of the things that you want to minimize are the two enemies of money, one being taxes, the other being inflation. And so hyperinflation, I actually got this definition from Google. So hyperinflation is defined as a term to describe rapid, excessive, and out of control general price increases in an economy. What does that mean? Well, if you worked in the construction industry like I have, then lumber prices over the last year and some change has gone up exponentially, right? We're paying 2, 3, 4 times what we're used to paying for lumber. Well, that's hyperinflation, right? When the prices of things go up so rapidly, it is out of control. And that can affect your wealth. Well, how does it affect your wealth? Simply being that inflation and taxes can erode your wealth if you don't watch out for them. So hyperinflation can certainly be a factor for you as well. And so when there are changes in the economy that you can't control, that you don't anticipate, there are things that you can do in order to mitigate or minimize those impacts. So hyperinflation, a term for this week, rapidly rising inflation, typically measuring more than 50% per month. Can you imagine that? Let's just take something very simple. Let's just take, I don't know, your utility bill, right? So I pay roughly $30 a month in gas. And if that increased 50% per month, well, the first month, that's not so much, $45. Right now I'm up to $45 a month. Doesn't seem too bad, but if it continues to increase at that rate on a monthly basis, can you imagine what I'd be paying 6 months from now, a year from now in my gas bill? So important to understand and recognize the impacts of things like hyperinflation or inflation and put certain things in place to mitigate against it so that you can build wealth. And I'm excited to bring on my colleague, mentor, coach, friend. How are you doing today, John?
Oh, been a busy day. I'm doing great, though. I can't complain.
Awesome.
Can you hear me? You hear me?
I can. Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. So I apologize to the audience. I hear you great. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
To the audience, and plus I'm still dealing with this back issue. So I got a huge back brace on underneath this thing. No, don't worry about this. This is life, man. This is just part of life. Hey, at least I can feel it.
Hey.
What did we say? I can't remember which one we did. We talked about gratitude, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, you gotta
get
be gracious.
To feel it.
Look, I can sit in this chair by myself. It's painful, and we'll do this talk real quick, but it's okay. My wife went and got me some really good medication. And as you know, I don't like to take medication, but so sometimes in vain. So no, yeah. But glad I was able to make it. I just walked a client out to the elevator, and it went a little bit longer than we expected, but part of the job of helping people. So
hey, we can excuse your absence when you're serving families. Yeah, awesome. Well, definitely glad to have you. I was sitting here, just sharing. It was hard to find some H terms for wealth, right? Like, so I'm like H terms related to money, right? Like in my Google search. So I found a few that I wanted to touch on today, just to help bring some insight. And so we're talking about hours, hyperinflation, and hedge funds, right? Okay. So when it comes to hours, right, I was reaching on that. We've talked about this in the past, of course, about how your most valuable asset is time. And so can you expound on that a little bit? I touched on it a little bit before I moved on to hyperinflation, but can you share with our audience why, in terms of building wealth, why time is such an important factor? It's not just about your money, but the time that you invest.
Absolutely. Well, the time was the biggest and best investment I've ever made was into myself. And that was through my time. I believe the only gift God gives us is time. And then we trade it in for all of his other gifts. Like, I don't think God gave me a great marriage. I think he gave me time. I sold it into my wife and we created a great relationship. And sometimes that investment goes up and down too. So, but hours play a huge part because it's not infinite. We don't have an infinite amount of time. So it's more important than money. You can make another $100,000. You can make another, a few $1,000s. But do you know if you can get another 30 minutes? And none of us know that. So if we actually I try to live, and this has probably been just over the last 10 years, so we're not going to act like I've been doing this a long time. I try to live a life like I'm living for eternity. So the time I'm investing now isn't really even for this world. It's for my next life, right? Because that one's eternity. And this one might be 80, 90, 114 years, right? But the next one's eternity, and nobody even knows how long that is.
Yeah.
So it comes to building wealth, you do have to pay attention to your time. And when we're talking about hours, we're definitely not talking about working and how much money you earn per hour. Actually, I don't really calculate that, right? I calculate what I earn per interaction, almost. Like each interaction, what do I average each interaction, right? Because some interactions make me $30,000 and some interactions make me $34. Okay, none of them are $34. That was way too low. Actually, I don't even know how to earn $34, but all of my interactions are more than $34, right? Dang, yeah, I don't even know how to make that little. Okay, 300. Is 300 still too low? Right, so some make me 30,000, some make me 300.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at the transaction itself. I'm looking at the interaction. And it's some clients who make me more than just their interaction because they refer me so much business. I have this one young lady who's always sending, like, 2 of my appointments this week is from her. And then I have another older lady. I've done very well for them, right? So they send me business. So two of the appointments this week is for her. And then one is a young lady I've never made any money with, but she always sending me people.
That's good.
I think about interactions as far as hours. I've never calculated what I make an hour, because then that would be disgusting. Like, what I do for a living. If I'd close one, account, where I move money from one place to another, and I make $15,000, but it only took me 40 minutes. That's disgusting. Yeah. So I try not to do that because also it'll mess me up psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
There is something called being a victim of your cash flow. You can be a cash flow victim.
Yeah.
I've been it before. It's not fun.
No, that's good insight. And I love how you said, like, focusing on what you earn per interaction. And I kind of equate that to, like, executing, right? Like, what did you earn to execute? What did you earn to get the job done? Because the hours don't matter if you don't follow through, if you don't get the work done.
Yeah. Matter of fact, in my business, I'm gonna just say it the way we say it, right? If I don't close, it didn't make any money.
It didn't serve anyone.
It didn't serve anyone. They didn't get help. I didn't get help. My family didn't get help. Their family didn't get help. And in the beginning, their family gets. Actually, no, that's not true. I was gonna say their family gets the biggest winnings of what we do. That's not true. It all depends on what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because each transaction is different. But I love doing this. I love helping people with I love seeing the look on their face when they know, when there's a level of security in their eyes now. When they know, you just know this is going to work now.
Yeah.
Right? When before it was kind of some uncertainty. It's like, oh man, is it gonna work? I hope it works. And then when you put the right plans in place, you kind of know what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That stuff is fun to me.
You give people certainty. I like that. I know I needed that, it's something that was important for me. And I think also it's kind of in terms of building wealth. Like I had a conversation today with a good friend of mine, and we were like on the phone for 4 hours. But like
Wow.
the time that we invested in that conversation was so rewarding, right? It was so uplifting, like, you know, being able to talk about certain things and, you know, have these meaningful conversations. And so I kind of took that from what you were saying as well in terms of the interaction, right? You can be giving so much more to that family, and vice versa. They could be giving so much more to you than just this transaction. Like the relationship that's being built is also a form of wealth.
Actually, that's one of the blessings of my career is my clients aren't just clients. It's like very few even act like a client. They act like the young lady. That's one of the reasons we went over time is she's a little older than me. She's, you know, a few years older than me, but she sees me as her big brother. So we don't just talk about her financial stuff. We talk about all kind of stuff and the things she's going through and the relationship stuff, and you know, and she's very close to my wife. Like, you know, all of these people are super close to my wife. In all honesty, I don't know if they like me at all. But, you know, because I, you know, even in this past meeting, I said some very tough stuff to her. The cool thing is she's so open to receive now. Like, you know, it's funny when people go through something, their eyes of enlightenment happen. And what was really funny, one of the things we talked about was how over the last year and a half she hadn't listened to any news, because she was like, years ago she thought we were weird that we didn't watch the news at all. Yet we're so informed. Her words, okay? Then over the last year and a half, she hasn't watched any news. And she's just like, game changer. Like, my life totally changed from that. And I was like, really? How so? She's like, I just view the world differently. I said, yeah, because you've been told how to view the world before. And most people don't get it. But it's really fun to interact with people. And one of the things I was telling her, well, one of the things she said to me, and then I just reiterated that I seem like this isn't something I have to do, that is something I get to do. And I said, boom, you got it. This is something I get to do, not because I just deserve to do it. And yeah, I put the time in, and yeah, I got my 10,000 hours, and yeah, I did all the studying, and yeah, I did all the reading, but I still get to do it. Right? I could just be a Jeopardy contestant and just have all this stuff in my brain. I get to give it to somebody, so it's really cool.
That is. And I actually had that feeling yesterday when I was working. It was just like, you know, like I was moving around and I was, you know, doing what I feel like I do well, coordinating and making things happen. And, you know,
you do that very well. Yes.
It was just, you know, this feeling like I get to do this. Like, this doesn't even feel like work, you know, but I'm operating in this space and I'm operating in my gift, or, you know, so it seems to me. And, you know, you just like, you know, that you're in the right lane and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's a good feeling. And to, like we talked about last week, to have gratitude for what you get to do, and to you know, get to do what we do tonight. You know, just having the privilege. You know, it may seem like a chore at times. Oh, I gotta every week, but like, no, like we get to share information that we were blessed to come across, and the time that we invest in sharing this message is worth it if one person, you know, gets served, if a family's life is able to be changed, and it's so worth it. And you don't count the cost, you don't count the time, and the relationships that we're able to build. And like you said, I see my clients the same way, right? Like they're more like family, they're more like friends than they are just a client. And so
it's really cool when, it's one thing for us to view it that way, but it's really cool when they view it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like one couple that came in today, you know, we had to do some paperwork and stuff, and they're a newer client. Like I can't even say it's been a year, right? But we've literally hung out. They, the husband made me an honorary member of their cigar club with him and his boy. So that stuff is like really cool and really fun.
Yeah.
Right? But it's really cool when like they leave and then they're like texting you and they're like, hey, don't forget to do this. And hey, make sure you look this up. And then, when I knew I was hurting in my back. So they brought something for me to help with my back. Right. And that's just, you don't do that to your normal mortgage guy or the person who has your life insurance or something. But they do it with me, right? And it's kind of fun. It's really fun to have that. But and some people will see that type of stuff. I'm a huge business investment guy, right? Even the 4 hours. Now, some high achievers, right, in our world will look at the 4 hours you spent on the phone with one of your friends and think that's not an investment. But to me, how did you feel when you left that call? How did she feel? Matter of fact, you probably had energy to live off of for 3 days from a 4-hour call. You and I haven't even talked, and I know this.
Yes.
Right? Because when I'm on the phone with one of my boys for 2.5 hours, or my mom, and sometimes me and my mom do this, right? Because I've matured in some ways, she's matured in some ways, but also she's humbled in some ways. I've humbled in some ways, but she's been through some stuff that I haven't been through, and those types of things. But that 2 hours, that the investment, the return on that investment is so much greater than the 4 hours you spent. And I wasn't even on the call. I don't even know who you were on the phone with. I don't even know what all y'all was talking about. I kind of know you though, right? And I know you probably can live a week off of the energy of that and the mindset of and being able to go help some other people and putting some other perspectives in line for your own life. Yeah, those investments, and sometimes I think we miss the human capital of those investments. We forget those parts. And I've been blessed to know that those things are important, and my life is proof that it works because I get silly stuff like this. I call it silly, but I think it's a huge thing that they found out 2 days ago that my back was having an issue, and they remembered. Most people forget stuff 2 hours ago. Yeah. They remembered, drove all the way here 45 minutes to sign one piece of paper, one signature. 45 minutes, right? And turn around, go back home. And bring me something from my back. And give me a hug as they go into the elevator. Come on. That's good stuff. Yeah. That's an incredible investment. And I think the return, I'll never, look, minuscule. My investment was minuscule compared to the return.
That's good. That's good.
And that's just one couple. And I know you've experienced that. But I think what we need to say in here, right, in this talk now that I'm thinking about wealth, is to make sure you add your heart into it. I thought of an H. Right? There's heart in building wealth. Right, and I've said numerous times in our gathering that whatever gift God didn't give you, He placed in somebody near you. But love is the key to that treasure. So heart, absolutely. Heart. So heart, hours, hyperinflation,
and hedge funds. This is like
this
not
is fun, man. This is fun.
It is, right? Like when people, and I think I love that we are breaking down some of those myths when it comes to building wealth, right? Like we're simplifying it in a way, because when we get to these other terms, hyperinflation and hedge funds, right? People think like that's what's important to know in terms of building wealth, when what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, heart and hours, right? Like that is so much more important in terms of building wealth. Yeah. And but yeah, we'll go ahead and talk to them about these other terms, because they are a factor, right? Like they can have an impact.
Hyperinflation definitely has an impact. So yes. And you and I had the privilege of speaking on somebody else's YouTube channel this past weekend. And one of the questions was about inflation. How do we hedge? How they hedge themselves or protect themselves? I can't remember how they worded it against inflation. And I mean, hyperinflation is something we're probably getting ready to go through. Hyperinflation is fast, right? So we'll see. Matter of fact, we see this type of stuff when hurricane season hits and gas prices shoot up or something like that, or right. So it's fast. It's crazy. Actually, it's actually you just put this up here.
Excessive. Yeah, the definition. Yeah,
excessive makes a lot of sense, but it's just fast. It's something that shoots up, and it's astronomical. It's not fast and it's only small. No, it's big, right? So right now, if inflation's 4.5, right, don't be shocked you see 8, right? I would call that hyper.
Yeah.
Because it's just under doubling. But how do you hedge from that? Well, how do you hedge from that is you making sure that you're outpacing inflation any other time.
Yeah.
That's it. Just make sure you have a huge reserve. And you're outpacing inflation any other time. The bad thing is most time when inflation is what it is normally, people aren't outpacing it. And the client just left. She was very pleased with her portfolio, so we pulled up her Fidelity account, several Fidelity accounts. The new employer she has Fidelity. So we were going through and I was going through the actual funds, the funds we had selected and how they performed. And of course, if you got money in the market right now, I mean, it's been performing incredible, right? But she was so excited and just loved giving me credit. She's like, that's all you. I hadn't touched this since we talked. I'm like, I mean, and I tell her straight up, I'm like, hey, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect a return like that. I'm aiming at 12. I'm aiming at 15. I didn't expect, her number. Right, which was double what I'm expecting, right? But these are just things we do, right? So because she had a great year, actually a great 2 years, really, we looked over 2 years, all right? Because she had a great 2 years, when hyperinflation hits her, not gonna be as bad. Plus, it's money she isn't using.
Yeah.
So, and then I believe I'm just probably because I'm optimistic, all right? Then we're going to experience hyperinflation, everyone, right? But I believe it'll subside and go back down as we get some other things in place.
And some industries have already experienced it. I mean, I know we have in construction. Oh, yeah, like lumber prices, we were paying 3-4 times what we're used to paying for.
I heard. I wasn't doing any home improvement stuff, but I had plenty of friends that were. One friend put a deck on hold. That we're going to do. They're going to expand the deck, and it was going to be like another extension of the house, if you will. But the deck was going to cost, $100,000. All right. I did hear recently. Maybe you can confirm that lumber prices have gone back down.
Yeah, they're starting to go back down.
Yeah, but I knew last year. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and then we saw. Well, it was probably earlier this year where we saw the biggest increase, where 2x4s went from $6-7
in February.
Yeah, up to like 20 close to $25 a piece. And we're like, so we're like trying to mitigate, and man, there's like, I can't, like, my budget doesn't account for paying 4 times what I'm used to paying for lumber. So,
let's talk about why does hyperinflation happen?
Absolutely.
Most people think it's like this quick thing and lumber prices just went up. No, there was a whole trickle effect that created lumber prices to go up that high. Right? So the cost of trucks moving, the cost of guys being out there cutting freaking trees down. It's a whole bunch of stuff leading up to, right? And then supply and demand.
Yeah.
That's the one I think we forget the most. Supply and demand. COVID happened, there's a bunch of trucks not on the road. there was a bunch of stuff just not moving. So it created this vacuum, this hole, if you will. Then now stuff we used to have an abundance of, it just wasn't there, which creates a new price for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So as we always talk about value on this call, right? We got to pay attention to those types of things, right? So supply and demand is a huge part of that hyperinflation thing.
No, that's true. That's true. We're experiencing it now with wire mesh. Anybody knows what that is, but it's steel, right? It's a steel product, and the wire that they use to make the wire mesh is like not being made, right? It's not available. It's not as readily available. So the price is shot up, right? And I had an estimate for a job at one price, and now I'm trying to buy it out, and it's like $50,000 more to get the material. And I'm like, I can't. Like, somebody's got to pay for that.
That's huge.
You know? Yeah. It's making
not a small number.
All right. And we have, it's a significant quantity of that material on this particular job, but $50,000 in my budget, right? Like, try to explain that to the president and the CFO. Like, we had to spend $50,000 more because this material price went up, and so in business and personally, like, you got to put certain measures in place to protect against things like that. So it doesn't just apply in our personal finances, it applies in business. And when you're thinking about a business owner and making decisions for the business, right, in order to keep the business going, sometimes they may make decisions to cut labor or to cut, certain things to stay profitable in business. And I think you've mentioned it before. If we put ourselves in the shoes of the business owner, we can understand why they may make certain cuts. But right now, we're not really experiencing a problem with job opportunity, right? There's plenty of jobs out there, people not willing to work on them. But, McDonald's is paying $16 an hour, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I was in a Wawa a few days ago. Let me take that back. That was Saturday. I was in a Wawa, and starting, I think I could have scored a sign at $15 an hour. And I was like, wow, that's and people always have this argument, man, what do you call it? Minimum wage. Minimum wage needs to be like $15. Nobody can live a life or raise a family on minimum wage. Minimum wage isn't for people who building a family. Like, if you 55 years old and you concerned about minimum wage, that's not the problem of the companies, and that's the problem with you. There was a disconnect somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seriously. Like, you married 3 kids, or even if you single mom, 2 kids or something like that, and the best you could do is a minimum wage job. That's a problem with you. That's not minimum wage is for the high school. My daughter, I make a heck of a lot more than minimum wage. I don't know what minimum wage is, but I know she make a heck of a lot more than minimum wage down there at that seafood restaurant she works at. And she's 16.
Right.
So if you 45 talking about I can't live off of, what is minimum wage anyway? $10?
I don't even know.
Oh.
I know it used to be like $7.50, $7.75, but then it went up. I haven't made minimum wage since I was in college, so I don't know.
I ain't made minimum wage since I was in high school.
So I could not tell you. Well, shoot, I guess if I count,
I was in the 80s, but still.
Yeah, I did work an internship while I was in college. So even then, I was making more than minimum wage. So.
Ain't that crazy? Internships making minimum wage.
Right. All right. But you got to be seeking opportunity. That's cool. That's cool. So that's hyperinflation, right? If you're curious, you want to know what that meant. But it is something that you need to be aware of so that you can plan accordingly. We've talked about it before. In terms of building wealth, you have to anticipate what could happen and prepare and plan for it. And hyperinflation is something that you do want to plan and prepare for, but you got to be aware of it first.
That's a big one.
Yep. So there's a definition again. If you aren't prepared for it and you need to get prepared for it, you probably should reach out to John or myself to have a complimentary financial consultation so that we can help you put certain things in place to hedge against inflation, minimize taxes, all that good stuff in order to build wealth. So just throw that in there.
Yeah, didn't we have a guy on a YouTube live we did who was saving 50% of his income?
Yep, at 22 years old.
22 years old. And man, he was hedging against inflation.
Absolutely.
50% of his income he was saving. That was beautiful.
So see, now I'm thinking about all the H words, habits, right? Like that. Now I can think of H words, habits, right? Your habits certainly impact your ability to build wealth.
Absolutely.
Right? So yeah, we'll maybe touch on that a little bit too. But let's get it into this last term or word, hedge fund. All right. So I had to look this one up too. I know the term, I've heard the term, but I'm not familiar with it because I don't do anything with hedge funds. But a hedge fund, a limited partnership of investors that uses high-risk methods, such as investing with borrowed money in hopes of realizing large capital gains. Yeah. What that sounds like to me is a lot of risk, right? And I have a low risk tolerance. So I probably won't deal with any hedge funds anytime soon. And
unless you're really wealthy, most of the time you're not even going to be privy to a hedge fund. Because who invests in hedge funds, right? Really wealthy people who approached by the hedge fund guy, right? Whoever that is. And believe it or not, some hedge fund advisors, people who run hedge funds, they make $1 billion in personal income a year. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy. Like you can have $1 billion income. Yeah, but some of them do that well, right? They are really risky. They can be really risky. Matter of fact, the whole premise of a hedge fund is to be risky, so that you can get the highest returns you possibly can. And we're not talking about 10, 12%. We're talking about 100, 300% returns in a hedge fund. The other one is institutional investors, right? Sometimes an entire company is investing in a hedge fund. Sometimes their pension funds are invested with a hedge fund, or maybe just parts of it. Maybe not the whole thing, but a good chunk of it is invested in a hedge fund. But unless you're really wealthy, you're an institutional investor, many people don't get privy to a hedge fund. But they're out there. So a lot of them too. And these are just really, 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 really smart people who pay attention to things, and they kind of manipulate the markets. Yeah. By shorting one stock or driving up the markets in one particular sector and then pulling out, stuff like that.
That's good. This is something else that I came across, that the name hedge fund comes from the idea that it offers protection so that if one asset falls, another increases in value, thus providing protection so that the fund will protect investors' capital. So even in theory, but even this idea that there's a certain level of protection, and we talk about that in terms of building wealth. You should both build and protect your wealth while you're building it. And so even really wealthy people mitigate their risk in some way.
They hedge investments, for sure. And that's why when we as strategists, when I'm putting together a plan for someone, most people are coming to me looking for a product. They're looking for a Roth IRA, they're looking for some mutual funds, they're looking for some exchange traded funds, some index funds or something like that. I'm looking for the plan. Like, what's the full plan? So that way we can fill all the holes of the plan So that way, if they did want to run into a hedge fund, somebody, blah, 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 and it's a more risky investment, they're okay because they have all the other stuff taken care of. That's me hedging their portfolio for them. So if they go off and do something crazy, right, especially if it's against what I would like for them to do, it's their money, right? I still help them by making sure everything else over here was good.
Good stuff. That's good stuff. So let's touch on this one, right? Since it did come up, habits, right? As we round out this conversation today about all things H, in terms of building wealth, how important are your habits?
They're everything. They're everything. What you do daily determines who you become permanently. They're everything. They're everything. I have a friend who's joking me this past week. I think he was at my home. He was staying with me. Anyway, I guess it was funny to him that, in the way I was expressing some things to my wife and my daughter, right? And really, we were just talking about standards. It's just our standard. These are our standards. This is what we're going to do. This is how. I'm not reducing the standard. You rise to the level of expectation, right? Well, the same thing with habits. If you, I'm really weird, right? Because I even have habits I think everybody does this. You might not admit it. When I walk in my house, my briefcase is in this hand, right? I hit the garage door. I walk in. I'm being greeted, right? And then there's a specific chair my briefcase goes into. Okay. Everybody in my house, I think they miss it, right? Because sometimes it's a chair in my bar, right? Sometimes I'll walk in and somebody else's stuff is in that chair. And it's like, it's mechanical for me. I don't even know, right? But now I'm at a point, this might be wrong. Y'all gonna have to pray for me. Whatever's in that chair, I throw it on the floor and I put my briefcase down. They'll learn, huh? I guess they'll figure it out. Right now, mind you, we've been in this house 6 years, right? We've been in this house 6 years. I've been doing that for 6 years. You ain't figured it out yet? Right, so whatever's in that chair goes on the floor. I don't really care what it is either. As long as it ain't something that'll mess up the floor, it goes on the floor.
That's funny. But and I think you said this before, that we weren't created to be disciplined. We were created to be habitual. And that was part of the conversation I was having with my friend today. We talked about you and Yabby too, right? Y'all are part of the conversation. But the idea that like your habits influence or like they are, it's who you are, right? It's who you become. You become your habits. Like what you do daily, like you said, determines who you become permanently. And so if daily I have a certain routine or ritual to accomplish or build wealth, right? Like we oftentimes we think that wealth is it's a destination, like it's a spot that we get to, but it's really what you do daily, right? All of the little things that you do to lead up to building wealth, right? It doesn't happen overnight. And that's what I was sharing earlier, that time is your greatest asset when it comes to building wealth. And so over time, as you implement good habits, right, then you over time will build and create wealth. When you do the right things with your money, right? You pay yourself first. You exercise discipline, or you have a spending plan like you talked about this past Saturday. Right? When you do those things consistently over time, the result is wealth, right? Like, so wealth is the result of those habits that you do on a consistent basis. And so if you can focus on the habit, you can work on the habit and get that in place and build on that, the wealth takes care of itself, right? And that's what I love about it. Like, it's just kind of like, all right, if I consistently pay myself every month, right? Like if every week when I get paid, I have this amount of money or this percentage of money go into, I don't have to think about it, right? It becomes a habit. It's habitual, right? I don't even think about it. The money goes where it needs to go. And then 6 months from now, and a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, like I'm seeing, because of that weekly discipline of allocating money to that bucket, right, for savings, or to that bucket for travel. It provides the freedom to do the things that you want to do, that you like to do, to live the lifestyle that you want to live. And so, what more would you like to share about habits?
Oh man, there's so much stuff we can share about habits. Come on. And one of the things I had to learn, right? A lot of times, let's say you got bad habits, right? Most people are trying to stop the bad habit, when really you just need to replace it with a good one. A lot of times you're not going to stop the bad habit until you have something else in the way, right? Like people who smoke, you ever notice they end up gaining weight? All they did was they replaced it with eating, right? Or they replaced it with something else, right? So that's in anything you really do. And you know, part of my wealth isn't just the money. It's also how I treat people, how I treat my wife, right? Because remember, we're leaving a legacy. We're leaving wealth. Well, what does that wealth look like though? I'm even part of my wealth is how I like how our daughter sees how I treat my wife. And she comments on it. She sees how my wife and I interact with each other. And of course, she's seen us, have some disagreements as well. But she sees how we come back together, how close we are. Now, of course, she's 16, so she thinks it's gross, right? But she says it to my wife all the time. It's like, I really appreciate how you and Daddy do this. I really appreciate how you and Dad, and I'm so proud of Daddy for this, right? And it feels really good to hear that from your child, right? Even if they don't understand it all yet, right? That's a part of the wealth. So in my mind, in my heart, I hope, right, she'll look for a man who's even doing it at a higher level than me, and hopefully she'll live a good life, right? But I'm telling you, these are just habits. These are just habits. I'm kissing my wife. I'm telling her I love her. I'm flirting with her. That's a habit, right? I'm habitual. I want to be habitual. I don't want to be disciplined. I want to be habitual. I want to do it. Have you ever been doing something and you were just doing it, and then you pause for a minute and you didn't even realize you did it? Right?
Yep.
For example, I know everybody has experienced this, at least I hope, right? You ever been driving home and you went through 4 or 5 lights and you don't even remember those lights being green? It's a habit. It's habitual. And the fact you didn't get into an accident tells me they were green.
No, that's good. That's good. And that was some of the conversation I had today with my friend as well, right? Like we were talking about these very same principles, these ideals, because they don't just apply to money. They don't just apply to wealth.
No.
And I love what you said about like leaving that legacy through what you see, like what you model for your daughter, because that's part of your wealth as well. And
that's the one that scares me the most, though.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't scare me if I don't become a billionaire, or it doesn't scare me that doesn't. It's nice if I never own a private jet. That's probably far-fetched anyway. I'm gonna own a private jet, but let's act like I won, right? That doesn't bother me that much. What bothers me is my daughter married the wrong man because of my example. That scares the hell out of me. That scares the hell out of me. Or she lives this life trying to chase after things. Like somebody recently asked her, what does she want to be when she grow up, or what she want to do when she grow up? And against my will, or against my my better judgment, if you will, I answered for her. Right? I knew what she was going to answer anyway, but I wanted to do it for this particular person. Right? But they asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, and I said happy, fulfilled, significant. Don't be pigeonholing my daughter into some freaking career like it's going to be her end all to be all. Right? I just knew the person who was asking. So, because because there's a lot of people, that's how they think.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What does that mean? So you putting your being into a career or something.
Yeah.
But no, I want her happy, fulfilled, significant. That's what I want her to be.
Yeah, I actually asked my daughter that the other day. Like, what else do you enjoy? Like, what do you like to do? Like, other than gymnastics, like we know she was just like tumbling. Like it's the same thing, right?
Right,
Like
same thing.
Besides that, like what do you just trying to expose her. Like that's really what my goal is to expose her to some other things that she has an interest in. But likewise, right? Like I want you to live out your calling. I want you to be purposeful in not to, and that's something that I was able to recognize early on in my career as well. Like my career didn't define me. Like it was something that I could do, but oftentimes we define ourselves by our job or our career, and like that's not who I am. Yes, I have a degree in engineering, but I didn't necessarily consider myself an engineer. I looked at engineering as something that I could do, but it wasn't the only thing I could do. It wasn't the only gift I was blessed with. I was able to learn finances, right, and economics through working with you. And so like that's another skill set. That's another tool, right? And so a financial strategist is not all I can do. It's something else that I can do, right? Like it's something that's been added to the tool belt, but it doesn't define me, right? Like it's just a gift that I've been given to share with others. But who I am is like who I was created to be, right? Like, and that's constantly evolving and unfolding and becoming. And that journey is so much more interesting than the stuff, right? Like just doing the stuff, just becoming who you were created to be, and recognizing and realizing that, like that was a lot of my conversation today. It's just like you get to this space and you're like I had a revelation this past weekend, and it was just like wow, like and I feel like energized and empowered to like learn and study and grow in a different way than I have before. I'll share that with you after the call. But like and that, like you were saying earlier, like that gave me so much more life. Like like I haven't really slept much the last couple of days, and like I'm still energized, and
it's like
it's who I.
Yes. Where's my sister?
Where's your sister? I don't know. She's always keeping tabs on her. But yeah, like wealth to me is like I don't have the anxiety or stress or worry about building wealth. Right? We're sharing these concepts. We're talking about different terms.
Mommy.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
I'm coming in a minute. I'm almost done.
Mine, these are chips.
Okay, hide. We go hide seek. Go hide.
Okay.
1, 2. Oh, we get her to go.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like I don't have that stress or anxiety or worry that I know a lot of people feel when they thinking about money and finances. Like, I'm just becoming, right? I'm
I think the reason is because you have a healthy understanding of what all of this is about.
Yeah.
So you're level-headed in a sense when it comes to, of course, you want to build a wealth and stuff like that, but not to the detriment of your life, not to stop you from living. So, and hopefully more people will understand that. And one of the things you and I were talking about was, when I talked about person asking my daughter what does she want to be, even us, we fall into that trap sometimes, that when somebody asks us, hey, what do you do, we normally say our career, we normally say something like that. And most recently, really last week was a good example. My wife and I did 3 different speaking engagements together. We kind of tag teamed these talks, and they were over financial stewardship. And then my wife was allowing the people to actually have my direct contact information so they could reach me directly. So she was literally giving out my cell phone number. But what I did at the end of each one of those, I told them, I said, hey, you can reach out to me. Absolutely. I'm here to help. I'll definitely get back to you. But just know, normally I don't answer my phone. Not because I'm scanning the calls. Nope. I pay my cell phone bill. So I don't scan my calls. But mainly because I'm a husband and father first. And the crowd took understanding of that. I'm a husband and father first. Right? All this life strategist and financial strategist stuff, it's like number 5 on the priority list. Although it's probably it's in the top 2 of my income source. But I'm still a husband and father first. And I think that's important that we remember ourselves, right? When somebody asks you, what do you do? Change what you say. Right? Hey, what do you do? Whatever I want. Whenever I want, with whomever I want.
Why
I love that. I'm gonna start thinking of an answer like, yeah, I'm gonna have to work on my answer, so I can respond. But no, this has been fun.
This is a great talk. I like this.
Yes. Yes.
I was late, guys.
It's all good, John. And yeah, we'll have to maybe do I think we talked about this before, do a behind the scenes, right? So they'll get the good stuff is really after the show, right? Like we're talking about hedge funds and hyperinflation and boring, right? Like
the stuff is before the show and after the show.
Yeah. But it's about life, and when you have a certain perspective, like you said, on life and what it all means and why you're here, the tangible things, the wealth, the money is less important, right? But you do have to get it as an issue out of the way, right? You do need to understand how to manage that so that you can focus on what's more of a priority and what's most important. And that's what I love about, these principles. I was sharing with my father just the other day that I want financial freedom and financial independence for my children, right? So that they can be who they were created to be. Like they can make decisions. We talked about this. I don't know if it was Saturday or on the show that you did with us. Years ago. But, so that they can be who they were created to be and they can make decisions without having to consider money, right? Like they can make decisions because that's what they want to do, or they can make a decision because that's what they're called to do. Mm-hmm. But they don't have to make a decision based on, I got to pay these bills, right? I got to, right? Like that's such a, like in the grand scheme of life and living, it's just a small thing, right? And we make it such a big because we
it can end up being a big trap, though. It can end up being a big, right? Because everybody's calling isn't going to be their vocation. Yeah, it's not going to work out that way sometimes, right? But man, sometimes your job can become a ditch when really it's just supposed to be a speed bump. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that my wife is literally living out her call. She's excited to go do it, and it feels good, and it really feels good that she reminds me all the time that I'm the reason she gets to go do it. So I would say it was both of us the reason she gets to go do it, right? I couldn't have built my business without her, or it would have sucked building it without her.
So yeah, well, when we get to V, right, we're a little ways away from that, but we'll talk about vehicles, right? And we can touch on how your job. I love how Jamal King, guy from Chicago, talks about like your job is just a vehicle to help you get to.
I've said that, right?
Yeah.
And really, any opportunity we do, it's just a vehicle. It's supposed to take you somewhere,
Yeah.
That's what vehicles do. But vehicles drive at the speed the driver drives. And
Absolutely.
They also go in the direction the driver drives. So you could have the exact same vehicle as somebody else, and you may not get to the same destination.
Yeah, you could be going in the wrong direction or driving the wrong vehicle.
or driving a Yugo instead of a Ferrari or something.
Right. Well, we'll save that for V, right? For I don't know what week that is, week 22 or something like that. Yeah. But man, thanks y'all so much for hopping on. Appreciate, of course, as always, your insight, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your perspective. For those who had a chance to listen in, or share this with a friend, rewatch it, take some notes, but reflect. Take some of the information that we've shared tonight and over the past 7 weeks, and just reflect on it and think about something John used to say all the time. Still does, right? What you want, why you want it, and what you're willing to do to get it. And if we can, of any way, be of service to help you get to where you want to be financially, we're certainly here. You can schedule a complimentary consultation with either of us. Or you can just continue to tune in weekly, right? We're here every Tuesday. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.